Hey everybody, this is Robert People of RobertPeople.com, and you are listening to People's Court. Thanks for tuning in. Today is Thursday, February 28th, 2019. Now yesterday, the congressional hearing for Michael Cohen took place. Michael Cohen, as most of us know by now, was someone who worked for the President Donald Trump, and was considered as, quote-unquote, his fixer. Things have obviously changed since then, and Mr. Cohen is on his way to prison for a 3-year sentence. But anyway, yesterday, as for the hearing, it started in the morning, and I believe it went well into the afternoon. I'm not sure exactly what time it ended, but most of the country saw that. So now something else most of the country saw was a black woman being brought out and us having to hear. If you didn't see it yesterday, you saw it or heard about it today. And us, meaning those of us of color, having to hear for the 1,000th, 10,000th time how someone can't be racist because of their involvement with us. The way it went was like so. Michael Cohen made some statements about what Trump said to him at some point in the past about blacks being, something to the effect of blacks being too stupid to vote for him. And North Carolina Representative Mark Meadows replied to state to the effect that those are some pretty harsh accusations, some terrible things being said. So his response was to bring out a woman by the name of Lynne Patton, someone who worked for Mr. Trump in some capacity, in whatever capacity it was, because she had more than one position, but she worked for him. And to express that there's no way he could be racist, talking about Trump, of course, no way he could be racist if she ever worked for him, if she had the loyalty she has for him. Now, what made it even, the comment is bad enough, because again, we of color have heard that just about all our lives. All our lives, it never fails, and we're still hearing it today, as you saw in that. I mean, we hear it as it is, but for it to happen in that arena was just mind-boggling. We're talking about a House of Representatives member using that as a defense, using that to say that this person can't be racist because, look, he hired somebody black. Somebody black worked for him at one time. Well, last I checked, slaves worked for white. The black slaves worked for white masters too, and you know how that story went. So that was bad enough. But what made things worse, Meadows spoke and said of Mrs. Patton that she is the daughter of someone who grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. I suppose that reference was because of how things were in the South back when Miss Patton grew up. As she is, I want to say, I'm thinking of a story, she was mid-40s age-wise. So that's what we're looking at as far as when her, there she came up in. Okay? And again, there's no way, he said this, that she said there's no way she would work for someone who was a racist. And on top of that, he wanted her entire statement to be put on the record. What's interesting about this is the fact that not one time during her time out there did Mrs. Patton say a word. She said nothing. She said nothing. Now you can watch the entire exchange if you would like. I'm sure the videos are online. I haven't actually seen it myself completely, but I've seen exactly everything I need to see. read everything I need to read, because no one's really disputing that it happened, but it's all too common in our society today. Now, Mr. Meadows took it upon himself to speak for a grown woman. He asked her to come and speak. Well, I know he didn't ask her to come and speak. He asked her to come and be there. Okay? Of course, he's not going to say, hey, we like to use you as a prop, so hey, do you mind? But she was brought there. She wasn't given an opportunity to speak. Which, if I'm Meadows and I want to prove so much that I'm not racist, and nobody in the world is racist, I'm going to give her at least, 2 minutes to say something, 60 seconds, whatever. That's garbage, but at least I would let her talk. If you were smart, Mr. Meadows, that's what you should have done. Allowed her to at least speak. But he didn't. He spoke for her. Well, she says this. She believes this. No way she would do that. And she just stood there. Now, going through some comments on Twitter and Facebook, social media in general, people are coming down on her. Doesn't make sense to come down on her. Where she's sitting, she is not at all the person responsible. Yeah, she could have said no, she's not going to do it. But again, we're sitting in our homes, in the comfort of our homes, and behind our computer and phone screen, so we can tell her everything that she's supposed to do. But my issue isn't with her showing up. And even saying, oh, Donald Trump is just worried about business. He's not. And she was interviewed later on. So she eventually spoke. I want to say she was interviewed this morning. She did speak for herself. And as we could have figured, she defended Trump, saying he doesn't see color. He just sees business. That's one quote I saw. So my beef isn't with her. My beef is not with her. When you're in a certain position, you're going to do what you're being told to do. My problem is, again, with Mr. Meadows and this societal belief that a person can't be racist just because they associate with black people. And as I said at the beginning of this broadcast, white slave masters associated with black people too. So we need to stop going there. And once again, Mr. Meadows spoke for her. Grown woman. This is not some 11, 12-year-old child who cannot figure out the words of how to address or whatever the case. Not to mention this, if you have her coming there to speak, you can also prepare her to speak for herself. I wouldn't even feel comfortable bringing someone out, speaking for them, and then telling them to get lost. Because basically that's what happened. She was brought out there, then she was dismissed. And my question is simply this. Why did it happen that way? Why is that the way it went? Because we're talking about proving, okay, that the president is not racist, right? So what do we do? Now, this is not even first or second hand. This is, I don't know how far removed they are, because remember, the president was overseas wasting time and taxpayer dollars in Vietnam, hanging out with his buddy Kim Jong-un. That's what was going on with him. So we don't know how far removed Ms. Patton is from him at this point, at the time that she came out stood to speak. But he brings her out there, speaks for her, and that's it. That's all. And how do we know where everything is at this moment? We don't. But again, here we go again. Once more, here we go again. Now, Donald Trump has done and said enough, or has not done and not said enough, that the question of whether he is racist or not is not a question anymore. I'm not asking the question. I just see it as a major, major problem. I'm not going to fool myself and believe that 2019 is supposed to mean something. The only thing it showed is that the year advanced. Have we advanced as a society? No. If we have, we took steps back. And with any luck, and if if a certain group of people have their way, we'll take more steps back. It's sickening that the way you prove that you're a human being, a decent human being, is by taking other human beings and using them as props and parading them around. On top of closing their mouths, along with everything. The way you prove, and someone wrote to me on Twitter and said this. Someone asked me, how exactly do you prove, how does someone prove that they aren't racist? Specifically, how do they prove they aren't racist? Now, I'm scratching my head the fact that a person even has to ask that question. Because if you have to ask the question, I think you know the answer already. This right here is not it. If you have to ask the question of how a person can prove they aren't racist, again, we have the answer. You probably should show it in your behavior. Not by saying it. Not by dragging a black person out there and say, hey, look, I got her. All right, bye. And that's the way you prove you aren't racist. That's not the way to go with it. I can walk down the street all day, say, well, I'm not a rapist. I'm not a serial rapist or whatever it is. Oh, want me to prove it? And I go grab some random woman and say, see, I didn't rape her. Okay. You could be, if someone asked if you approved of slavery, you say, no, I didn't approve of slavery. That person asks you to prove it. You go grab a bunch of black people, stand them in front of you and say, see, look, I'm not even whipping them. And you may think, Robert, that's a little different. No, it's not different. It's not different at all. It's not different at all. Either people are ignorant of what the word racist means, or you're well aware and you're just in denial. But I know people aren't stupid. So for 200 Alex, I'll say denial. We're talking about Capitol. I believe this was at the Capitol, if I'm not mistaken. This is where, again, grown, 60-plus-year-old, and he pulls out a black woman, uses her is what he did, he used her to what? Speak for the president? To speak for Donald Trump? Not to mention my question on top of that, another question I have is, how did they know this would come up? How did they know this would come up to where they would have to have her ready to go out there? Let's think about this. Who knew that Michael Cohen was going to say that Trump was racist? Or who thought he was going to say that, to the extent that she needed to be placed somewhere strategically, so that if that comes out, hey, we happen to have somebody here. Because that's real convenient, especially when you don't know, when you're not aware of what testimony is going to come out. So, why was she already there? Someone expected this to happen? I don't know if the question was that, or maybe the question might have been asked and they thought, well, just in case Cohen says anything, we'll have her ready. But again, why do you need to have her ready? If I'm somebody who, I don't know, I'm a child molester, let's say, right? Let's say I'm a child molester, for example. And you tell me to prove it. I grabbed some random child that I never touched and said, hey, I didn't do it with them. I mean, there's so many examples, so many places we can go when it comes to stuff like this, where, you know, we think that is it. This is a sad place we are in. And people, and I'm talking about all across the spectrum. I'm not talking about just black people, Latinos, because honestly, to be completely honest, I bet there's probably more white people who were appalled by that than us. More white people out there were appalled at that than we are. Not to say it doesn't bother us, but guess what? Like I said in the beginning, we're used to it by now. So we probably responded more like, yeah, there we go again. Here we are. As some white folks, to include some Republicans, seeing that and saying, wow, oh my goodness, right? I close with this. You don't get a cookie for treating black people like human beings. Stop expecting the Nobel Prize because you have black friends and you choose to hire them to work for you. I say again, black slaves worked for white slave masters too. This is Robert People of RobertPeople.com. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.